Welcome to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Gold podcast, your destination for all things lacrosse. I'm your host, Kyle Devitt. Alongside me, Mr. Jack Piatelli, wearing the North Face, wearing his logo. He's got the hat on. We're ready to go today.
Yeah, really excited. We have a great guest coming up, and it's hard to believe the lacrosse season, collegiate season is right around the corner, and I'm looking forward to watching a lot of lacrosse.
Yeah, you might even open this notebook and do something with it.
Maybe. I doubt it, though.
Yeah, me too. We should welcome our guest, Johns Hopkins head coach, Pete Milliman. Coach, how we doing?
Good. How are you guys?
We're doing great.
Going great.
We're doing great. Yeah. Other than trying to roast each other to begin the show and then failing miserably, we're doing really well. I think Coach and I, Jack and I, know you from different places. I remember you from way back playing in the MLL, which I think you kind of were on what I think is the greatest pro lacrosse team of all time, 2008 Rochester Rattlers.
I'm on board. I agree.
It's the greatest team of all time. And, I think we've kind of seen each other here and there. We know we have a lot of people in common. And actually, I think I've heard about you being a coach when you were at Pfeiffer, which probably seems like a different life ago.
I didn't know the news made it out of town that much from Pfeiffer, but yeah, it's I don't know, this lacrosse circles, they always come back around, and you get to know the people that different stages of your life, and lo and behold, you're probably going to know them for a handful of decades. So it's cool. Well,
if you stay in it, or I like to say, if you're dumb enough to stay in it like me, or smart enough to stay in it like Jack, it's pretty inevitable. We have a running joke between us that if you put our phone like contacts together, it's probably everyone in lacrosse, at least in the Northeast. I think that's probably fair, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it works out.
If you stick around long enough, right, and you get to know a number of people. So I've been around a long time.
Yeah.
I remember, Kyle, I'm going to interrupt you. I remember reading an article you wrote when you were coaching. Was it Daniel Webster?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yep.
I remember reading something that you were right, because you were still, as you went into the full-time coaching, you were still writing, and I remember reading that, and that was one of the things I enjoyed most. I mean, I've read your stuff for a while, but I thought it was on point, it was hilarious, and entertaining. It was good stuff.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's great to work here at NELJ now and make it my full-time living, and I get to coach high school now, so that's fun. Mm-hmm. It's a good time. Mm-hmm.
Coach, we've had probably over 100 college coaches on this podcast. It's the first time a coach has come out and said they enjoy reading Kyle's work. First time. So I commend you for that.
Yeah.
Were you the only one that read that article?
Maybe the other coaches aren't reading the tabloids like I am. So
yeah, hopefully not. Your own Campbell came on here and said he loved it too. So
no, you do great work. You do great work. You really do.
Coach, let's talk about Hopkins.
Thanks for paying me to say that.
Yeah, you're welcome. A little under the table. Let's talk about Hopkins. I think it's one of the most high, I don't want to say stress, but it's one of the positions in lacrosse, one of the coaching positions in lacrosse where it was ubiquitous with a person, Dave Petromala, for so long. And then you took over after him, and, you had already proven your bona fides at Cornell and several other places. What has the difference been kind of building and reshaping the team in your own image since you were hired in 2020?
I mean, there's a bit there in that question, but I would start by saying I'm not trying to reshape anything in my image as much as this programs and what I know about the way I do things, and just trying to be honest and authentic to that. But it takes some time to get to know the team, the guys that you're with, the program, the environment, the university. I mean, a lot of this was new to me. I'd never been to Hopkins. I'd never obviously worked here, played here, and so there's just a lot of tradition. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of uniqueness that takes some time to learn and to understand, and about the guys that play here, and about the guys that used to play here, and about the guys that you need to recruit here, and so it's been great so far. I mean, everybody was living in a crazy world, and 2020 and through that pandemic and that first year with all sorts of weird, rules and restrictions and whatnot. But changing jobs in that time was kind of on another planet, and so it just was, a lot of learning, a lot of experience that we all had to go through and take with it what we could. But it's been amazing. It's been an exciting ride. We're on our way again. We just started this week, and so we're back in the mix and doing our thing again. So it's been great.
Coach, I remember it was your last year at Cornell, but you only lasted 5 games because of COVID, but you were ranked second in the country at the time. And I think you had just beaten Ohio State at Ohio State. But that was a great group of players you had that year. And then unfortunately, you couldn't finish it out and couldn't play the following year as well. What are your memories of that group and your experience through those first 5 games?
It was a good group. I mean, it was a good group, like you said. It was, we'd been building for a little bit. I thought, some pieces were coming together. Got to coach your son, Johnny on the attack and some other good players. And I thought we had dug in quite a bit. I think early part of the year to just find a way to get tougher and get a little bit stronger in certain areas. And it was starting to show itself on the field at times. I thought the guys were playing well together. They were digging out ground balls the way they needed to. We certainly weren't a finished product. We played 5 games. Who knows how the season ends? Nobody's crowning a team after 5 games. But I thought it was a great group. It was I loved my time at Cornell. It was a great program to work at, and loved coaching there and loved recruiting those guys and all that. And it's just one of the chapters that go into this career and life in general.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think kind of what Jack's alluding to too. They had beaten Ohio State, but the last game was the best game of the whole season for any team, and it was Cornell Penn State. And I remember watching that game and just being so pumped because it was such a high level game, right? You had such great players. You got Mac O'Keefe, you got Jeff Teat, you got all these guys, Donville, all these guys that are now kind of maybe not household names, but well known in the lacrosse community and the circles we all travel in. And that game in particular, I remember watching it was on LSN, and I was watching it with colleagues at Inside Lacrosse, and we were just like, this is one of these teams is going to win a national championship. And then literally COVID happened. Like, I feel like the next day, it wasn't the next game. It was like a couple days later. It was between then and the next game. And it was just like, I don't think they're going to shut down. And then it's just gone. And I know it's like not a great thing to talk about, and everyone kind of wants to move on like it never happened. But what was that like for you and all these young men who now had like a lot of decisions in front of them to deal with? Like what were those conversations like, while you were still at Cornell in those strange days leading up?
I mean, you said everybody was going through it and all kind of having that same conversation and working through those. They were tough. They were tough because there was uncertainty. There was, just so many issues to deal with. I actually was, going back through my notebooks. I just keep my stacks from all the way back to Pfeiffer. And so I was just kind of scrolling through the other day, and I stumbled across the notebook from that time frame. And I was looking at the Monday after that Penn State, we had a staff meeting. They kind of introduced like, hey, there may be some restrictions. They're going to cancel all out of season sports and this and that. And then like the next day, just top of my page, it was like season canceled, irreversible. And then just start working through like those next wave of conversations of like, what does this mean for, guys' careers and things like that. So, it was tough, man. Like, I don't want to go all the way back through all that stuff because it's pretty heavy. But it was hard. Like looking at some guys that may not ever put that jersey on again, or you have a special team that you think is got a lot of ability, and you work so hard to get where you are, and maybe it's going to get cut short on you. I remember trying to keep a humble outlook on that. because I was really close with the hockey staff at Cornell, and awesome guys, both the men's and the women's staffs, and both teams were entering the first round of NCAA playoffs, and both were the number one seed in their respective tournaments. And as much as I was like, shattered, and we were, I'm like, this guy's like, he's like sniffing a trophy right now, and they're like, really, really, at the end of it. And so it's just, it was different for everybody, and everybody lost something, and a lot, some guys ended their careers there, and some guys, found ways to keep them going. Um, those conversations were tough. I also think, one of the things I remember from those conversations, like going through the individuals with the guys at Cornell, saying I was, goodbyes, and I was going to, move on to another position, and just the way that they responded, it's just another challenge, as part of the, process here, coach, good luck, this and that. And, it was really just a, testament to, like, type of young men, and what their belief and their mentality. And, I think I learned a lot about that, that I think about when I'm coaching these guys, and how to bring that, that resilience and that consistency into, the way they see things. And just, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be ups and downs, like, just do the best we can. We're going to, obviously we're chase the dream every year, but, you have no control over a lot of things.
Coach, you were a great player at Gettysburg. Obviously, you had a very good professional career. Was coaching something in your blood, something that you wanted to do from, a young age, or is something that just clicked later on in your life?
I was never interested in coaching till I was, basically like my late 20s. I didn't think about it. I, probably had a few people say it to me at times, just because I was one of those, like, hyper obsessed kids with sports, and I'd think about things all the time. And it's like a lot of people that end up in a career, and you remember thinking back when you were a kid, you're like, I remember writing down, like, stats, or I remember writing, like, breaking down films of different sports, or this and that. And I just remember being obsessed with lacrosse, and get that bug, like, the second I touched a stick. And we would pass around the VHS tapes of the only games that were ever televised throughout the year. And so you'd take turns, and we all probably watched the same, like, 6 games for, like, the better part of a decade. Like, that was just what there was. It was like, the 95 championship game. Like, I think I had the 96 semis with I could scroll back through so many. I remember watching the D3 ones were on TV, and the Nazareth Salisbury game. So there's just, like, those things that you just obsess over. You watch them over and over and over again, get to know the players, the styles, and it becomes like your foundation of the sport, and your understanding of it. And some pretty good lacrosse, it's pretty good players to learn from. And I still think back, and I remember when I got to Princeton my first time. I worked there for a year, and, like, remember, like, just looking through file cabinets, I'm like, wonder if I can find any Coach Tierney notes. And I found a practice plan. I was like, almost framed it. I was like, this is so cool. And it's because what I grew up on. But yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into. I was, after college, trying a few different things, and always stayed close with my coach from college, and just kind of had a conversation with him. I think I might give this a shot. And so I reached out to the coach at RIT, who I'd known because he was my 9th grade JV lacrosse coach, Gene Peluso. He's now at Stevens Tech. And I asked him if I could come out and be a volunteer, and he said yeah. And so that was my first season as a coach, and never went back.
Yeah, I think, one of the things when you got hired after Cornell, I think I did this when you got hired by Hopkins, but Jack and I are D3 guys. You're a D3 guy. And when you got hired there, I had this thing where I worked at Inside Lacrosse where I just couldn't stand that Baltimore attitude of how, like, great lacrosse is here and everywhere else stinks and blah, blah, blah. I fought against it so hard. And it kind of, like, became like a running joke, like, oh, Devin's not allowed to talk about Maryland or Hopkins because he's so hard on them. But it's one of those things where I was so happy when you got hired there, because I was just like, that's one of our guys. Like, that's a D3 guy going to, like, one of the meccas of the sport. And I was just happy. I think I tweeted something out like, one of us, like D3 life, like I love that stuff. And Jack and I talk about it all the time, how formative playing Division III and having obviously vastly different experiences really shaped our love for the game. Do you think that was something, I mean, you kind of just alluded to that, but do you think that kind of gave you a little bit more drive to really succeed is like, yeah, I don't care where I started. I know what I'm going to do. I know what I can do. I know what I've been doing. I can do this. I'm the guy.
Yeah, maybe. I guess I don't think about it as much of the reason or the trigger for um, what came after it. And it certainly is a factor. I loved my experience. It's not. I guess I would say I look at D3 experience is different from a D1, not less, but just different and different in a handful of ways. It was great for me. I think I probably could have played other places or found other homes, but I think I found the right one for me. And I played for a guy that I saw him last Thursday, and we hung out and spent some time together, and like he's still an important person in my life. I talk to him all the time, and I think he was supposed to be my coach, and I love that it ended up that way, regardless of whether it's D1, D3, whatever. I just I there's probably some motivation that comes with being an underappreciated or undervalued commodity in a lot of ways, but at the end of the day, it all comes out in the wash, like if you can do the job or not. So, however that motivation gets you there, you got to find a way to be successful with the guys that you're with. So,
when you took over, Coach, terms of recruiting players at Hopkins, obviously it's going to be different process at Hopkins, the admissions and so on and so forth. Did you find yourself recruiting very similar type of kids, players that you did at Princeton and even at Cornell?
I mean, there's differences everywhere you are, for a number of reasons. A lot of the components of the school and the size and the social life and the academics, the finances, all these things are factors. But when you're building a team, you want to build a team that has an identity that you understand, something that you're familiar with. And I think that's where through that process, yeah, I will probably end up gravitating towards certain characteristics, certain factors in young men that help me work with them in the right way, and help the team be successful overall. When you find those common themes and you can find those common traits and bonds amongst the young men, some of those other characteristics become a little less relevant, a little less important, and it takes a while to get to know, again, the school that you're recruiting to, and it takes a while to get to know yourself and the type of program you want to run too. I don't I look back at the course of a career, like I don't know at what point you learn certain things, but sometimes they start to form a shape, and then they make sense to you, and then you fit into place, and you're like, I think I want to stick with that one. And so moving through this, it's the experience is it's just it's as good a as good a teacher as you can get. Like, you just got to go through things and learn them from real life.
I think, I've alluded to it now. This is my third time, but Hopkins is not the easiest place to coach, just because of the fan base is always, it's great to have a fervent fan base. I'll say that. It's always great. When you're not having a winning season or going to championships or even playoff appearances, it's not fun. All you have to do is open a message board. I don't suggest ever doing that. But if you do it, they're very involved, the Hopkins fans, just like most of the fans down there are, even more so than fans up here. Sorry guys, but it's true. Like, because your first two seasons, losing record, you're adjusting, you're, working with players that maybe you didn't know as well, and they're new to you, and you're trying to implement new systems. And I think what a lot of people said during that time is like, well, just give him time to implement his systems and his way of playing, and it'll be fine. And most of those people were the Cornell people and the people that have kind of followed your coaching journey. I guess, like, last year, you prove all of that now. You're 12-6. You have a winning record. You go 4-1 in the Big Ten. You just go up against, it's a brutal team in Maryland. It's always hard to play Maryland. It's always going to be a rivalry for Hopkins. But then you go to the NCAA tournament and you beat Bryant, and then you run into the national champion and you lose by 3. Like, that's a very successful season. But I think the stick of measurement for success at Hopkins is different, and it feels harder to say that about that season. Like, how do you look back on 2023 going into 2024 and what it did for your team and all of the players on it?
I think the first thing is to make a clear distinction between 2023 and 2024. You know, they're two different teams, and regardless of who's returning or who was on that team from last year and what they learned or what we accomplished or who we beat, it's irrelevant. Is even one of the messages today at practice is, we're 0-0. Everything about us is unproven. We have the ability to be whoever we want to be. So we start from kindergarten and first grade again, and work on our basics and our fundamentals and learn how to add and subtract and build something together. And you're not wrong with your opinion, your assessment of a lot of the aspects of being here, working here, running this program. Like, there's an intensity to it. There's no doubt about it. But I think that's also a really special place for people to want to be. Like, it's a privilege to have expectations like that. There's an opportunity here to have a national championship as your number one team goal every single season. Because it's Johns Hopkins. I think a lot of teams enter in that way, but I think the reality is that Hopkins, it comes with the membership. Like, you sign up for this. Like, this is ultimately what we're doing. I'm not saying it's a failure if we don't win one, but that's the goal, and it's always going to be the goal. I think there's a lot of great things we can do along the way. I think we did some great things last year. Ultimately, a quarterfinal team that finishes 12-6. Yeah, it's good. It's a good season. I was really proud of that senior class last year and the things that they did. They had 3 losing seasons and coaching changes and COVID and all kinds of stuff. But those guys to really bond together the way they did, sacrifice and commit to doing something that was, I think more selfless than people really grasp, and make a difference in the trajectory of this program and their time here. I thought that was an unbelievable success. I thought that was something to be very proud of, and I think it was a lesson for a lot of the guys that were on that team to take away from and to learn and to impart going forward. And at the end of the day, like, you're starting all over again every year, and you're building this team the best version that you can this year. Even if it's one person different, it's a different dynamic, it's a different chemistry, different locker room. People are older and they have different experiences, so you have to treat each one as its own group, as its own team, and not try and pick up where you left off last year, or utilize any momentum that you had from last year, because you'll be victim of it if you do.
The second annual New England Youth Lacrosse Convention returns to Gillette Stadium on Sunday, February 4th. This year's event is presented by the Boston Cannons and powered by Mass Youth Lacrosse. Over 40 presenters and 30 vendors covering all topics for the girls and boys youth game for town leaders, coaches, and parents. Visit mathyouthLax.org to purchase tickets. That site again, mathyouthLax.org. Once again this winter, Piatelli Lacrosse has a great way for you to stay in shape and play lacrosse this off-season. Starting in January, their indoor lacrosse program will take place at Four Kicks in Taunton. This program is open to youth and high school players of all ages, regardless of school or club affiliation. The up-tempo pace of indoor box lacrosse is an excellent way for players to learn to play faster and develop new skills that will make you more effective on the field come spring. Coaches will be provided for each game, and all players will take part in a mini clinic prior to their game to work on different box lacrosse skills. Make the most of your off-season and play some box lacrosse. For more information on Piatelli's Winter Box Lacrosse League, visit piatellilacrosse.com. That's Piattelli lacrosse.com.
That's got to be quite a challenge for the players that are returning. They're thinking we're going to start right where we left off, right? And it's not the case. You got to start all over again.
Sure. I mean, yeah, we're not starting the season 12-6. We didn't play a quarterfinal game to enter into this year. So I think they get it. I mean, there's a lot of tough things. There's a lot of challenges. We just had Paul Rabel came and spoke the other day, and one of the lines he read it a couple times. The spotlight is hot. It's hot. It's not easy to stay there. It's hard to maintain an existence there over and over and over again, because it's challenging in more ways than you can really comprehend until you're there on a regular basis. And just trying to keep our guys, humble in their approach, discipline in their mindset, focus on the right things, and build this together. Like whatever they do, whatever they earn, like they're going to do it together. Nobody's going to give you anything. And you'll learn that at Hopkins pretty quickly. Nobody wants you to win a game outside of your own locker room and your own fan base. So, you have to go after it and take what you need if you're going to get it.
And I think just to not just counteract what I was saying about some of the not super positive things, one of the great things about Hopkins is it's so amazing to see a game there. Like even not necessarily from the press box, but like even other places. Like if you can go see Johns Hopkins play at home, the experience of that, the one huge stand, just like overlooking everything at Homewood, the different material in the creases, the far side where the kind of the admins are and all that stuff. Lacrosse isn't like other sports where, oh, you have to go see, well, I mean, Syracuse is probably the only one I can think of for lacrosse right now off the top of my head, but it's not like, oh, I have to go to Fenway, like for my life, even if you're not a Red Sox fan, it's like, well, you should probably go to Fenway. If you're a lacrosse fan, you should probably go to Homewood. You know what I mean? It's just one of those places. And I actually coached a game there on spring break when I was coaching at Emerson. And I remember being in the locker room and being like, I'm in the Hopkins locker room. Whoa, this is awesome. And then like looking down the long hallway, seeing like, are the football coaches still down there? Like their offices. So like just seeing that, like looking down that long hallway, it's beautiful wood. And I'm like sitting there and I'm like, I'm coaching this team that's not very good. And we're going to go play on this amazing field against this other team that's also not very good. I feel so weird about it, but I remember coming out of that locker room just being like, this is amazing. There's no one here. I don't care, but this is awesome just to coach at Homewood. It's just such a cool feeling. And then seeing games, when PLL visited, going to see them in Hopkins games in person, when they play, especially when they play Maryland. Oh my God. It's like one of the greatest experiences you can have. So, for all like the heat that I give Hopkins, and like part of it's kind of an inside joke for me and people that have read my work for a long time, it is a very special place to play a lacrosse game. Did you feel that when your first time walking out, like just being like, whoa, I'm a coach at Hopkins. We're at Homewood. This is awesome.
There's a reality check on a regular basis here. Just, having a journey like I've had and the places I've been, like, I'm looking out my window right now and I get to see the field. We just got, they're rolling out, the little beads and whatnot to put down a new piece of turf because they just replaced it a few weeks ago. That's you put that as well as anybody could. I mean, it's amazing in more ways than I can explain on here, but trying to keep that appreciation, that excitement, that reverence for this program, this opportunity, being a part of this team, relevant for the guys, for myself, for the staff, but keeping that excitement and love, passion for it, fresh for the guys on a regular basis, because it's amazing. It's amazing, and I've coached a lot of places. I've coached games. I've played games in some tough places. I don't know if I could find them again. But get a chance to be here. Yeah. Like there's a different element on game days, different experience. There's a lot of eyes. It's, a lot of scrutiny, a lot of opinions, but, there's a lot of love. There's a lot of cheers. There's a lot of celebration, when you're doing things well. And, I think that guys, have to have that appreciation constantly. I think I do as well. And it's important to keep the reality checks and, watching the set up on game day, and they bring the rollers out and they brush the turf on game day to make sure, the beads are even, stuff like that. It's neat.
Yeah, that says a lot to the players too, to have a Paul Rabel come back and speak to them. Obviously one of the best players of all time, and just the history of all the number of players that come through there, the national championships. I remember I used to go down and visit the Lacrosse Hall of Fame used to be on the campus, and that was pretty cool to go watch a game and check out the Hall of Fame, and just a great lacrosse experience. And I remember I think it was against Syracuse a number of years ago, and they couldn't fit all the people in. There was not enough room for a number of players. I was just floored by, like, you can't fit any more fans in there. It was because it was a big game. I forget what year it was. It was Casey Powell's senior year, I think it was. And but I've never seen that ever before. You know, I mean, when you talk about lacrosse, you talk about, you know, Johns Hopkins and maybe some of the other Ivies and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's got a lot of tradition, a lot of history, and a lot of great players come through there.
Yeah, my favorite of all time, Kyle Harrison, K18.
There you go. Just went into the Hall of Fame the other day.
Just won the Hall of Fame. That's right. Coach, I want to talk to you about your staff, right? I think you have a wildly interesting staff. And also, I feel bad because I didn't know John Cohen was working for you for ops.
Oh, really?
If you're an old school MLL head like me, because I covered it forever, John Cohen was they're kind of like SIDs. They're like, you know, they're like GM/PR guys back in the day. Everyone had like 7 different roles for an MLL team.
Mm-hmm.
John Cohen was the best. He was with the Outlaws. I would send him stuff, and this is when like Reese and Staggs were coaching there, and they just were like, Cohen, can you just deal with Devitt and like give him whatever he needs? And he would. And a lot of the guys that had that role were sick of me by the end, but he was always awesome and cool, and he must do a great job because now he's working for you here in this part. And I think that's awesome. So if you see John today, just be like, Devitt shouts out. I'd like, because I remember dudes that treat me well, man. I remember, people think you only remember the ones that treat you badly. No. You remember the people that treat you well. And then you remind them, like, thank you for that. Like I take
especially you, because not many people treat you well.
Dude, you're getting
right?
best Devitt.
Yeah.
This is I was a maniac. You have no, people listen to this podcast, like younger people, like, you got no idea, man. There was no rules. I was pretty ruthless with a lot of the stuff I was doing. But you know, in addition to that, you know, John Crawley, Brian Kelly, Jamison Coaster. How big is Jamison Coaster? Is he 6'8"? Because every time I see him, it looks like he grows 2 more inches. He's huge.
He's up there. Yeah, he's tall. He's a big dude. He works out. He's in great shape. He's one of those guys, like, he mixes right in with the players in the workouts and stuff like that. He's a maniac, but yeah, he's awesome.
He looks like a pro wrestler. It's wild.
Something like that. He could probably be an NFL. I mean, he would have to bulk up if he was going to do it, but he could be a tight end or something. I think he was a quarterback in high school. I think he was an awesome quarterback from what I remember. But yeah, he was MVP of the Turkey Bowl here back in the day when he was a player. So I haven't seen him throw a football too many times, but I'm excited about it.
I mean, seeing him at face-off stuff always threw me off. I was like, oh, he does face-off stuff. That's why I went to a tournament a while ago, and it was just face-off guys. It was the face-off showcase in New Jersey, and he was there, and I was like, what? Oh my God, everybody's getting in on this. And I guess that leads us into our next question, which we've been asking most of the coaches we've had on, is the whole face-off thing went crazy down in IMLCA. People want to get rid of it. People want to just do rakes. People don't want to clamp. What's your opinion on changing face-offs?
It's impossible to answer that question and stay in neutral on a podcast and not, fire up either side of anything. I love face-offs. It's unique to our game. I don't want to get rid of them. I think they're cool. I also think there's ways that, if you like, my opinion on it is that there is a rule that we haven't enforced well enough in the past, and that's led us to kind of manipulate and manufacture a million other rules. And that's that you should be able to cover the ball and withhold it from play, but we've let that happen in the last bunch of years. And so because of that, then we've had to change, like, the way you grip your stick and the way you stand and how far apart things have to be and blah, blah, blah. But all of it is revolving around one thing, that, like, if you're allowing somebody to cover the ball and withhold it from play, then it's going to bring in a whole million other things. But if you enforce a rule that already exists, maybe it's going to change face-offs. I'd be stupid to say it wouldn't, but I think they changed a bunch in the last handful of years. Not to say that they've gotten worse. I'm just saying, like, there's a rule in place that we feel like we've ignored. Like, I'm watching guys like spin around in a circle, and I'm yelling at the ref, like, how long does he get to spin? How many how far degrees does he go? Does he get a chance to look up or not look up or what? Like, I don't know any of it, but all I know is it says in the rules he's not supposed to do it. So, I set myself up because we got face-off guys who do that stuff. So I think the spirit of that it could allow that to be a little bit more consistent with the ball comes out. I think if a position exists where somewhere between Kyle Harrison and Zach Currier are not the automatic best at it in the history of the world, like, then maybe that position's a little overmanaged, because those guys are as good at the middle of the field, ground balls and competing as there is, that if you're not allowed to cover it, I bet you those two guys would probably cycle back to the top of that list of all-time best draw guys. So I just look at it in that way. I don't know, like it's become a specialized position, and it's not anybody's fault, and there's nothing wrong with it. I just, I think there's ways to adjust it so that we don't have to keep the ball withheld from play. And that was something I'm on that side of things. I don't know where that puts me. I don't know who's going to send me hate mail now because of it, but I think the ball can come out without being covered.
I agree with you on that. I mean, I played a long time ago, as you know, and when I played, it was a rake. You had the best athletes, two-way middies facing off. And you could actually go in and hit the face-off guy. You could go in and throw your shoulder on the guy. It was great. It was, it was crazy. But
careful, don't start telling people to do that.
I know, no, we don't.
That's how you get canceled on this podcast. I'm sure. Don't do that.
I'm sure some guys would love that again.
No helmets, right, Jack?
Yeah, no helmets. Wooden sticks. Yep. Yep. And dirt field, no grass.
Well, if you take away the clamp, you got to take away from goalies too. That's my argument.
Can you take away from a goalie?
Take away the clamp. He can't withhold it either.
Oh, I gotcha.
You know what I mean? That's kind of the count.
That's a good point.
That's the wise ass counter that everybody's giving on the internet that I just gave life to. But I mean, it's true. If you can't clamp anywhere else in the field, fine. Then the goalie can't clamp. So then you change the rule for that. And how does that change how goalies play? I think it actually, you could argue that's beneficial too. That now you can just, you can't clamp it. All you have to scoop it. You got to get out of your safe little space now. Yeah. And now I can kick this in, or, you got to come out of your crease and I can throw an elbow at your head, that's kind of like, there's a lot of different ways to play it. That's like, there's counterpoints for everything. I think just people like face-off people in particular, like I like them. I'm friends with several face-off people. I don't want to sound anti-face-off people, but you're all
people.
You're all head cases anyway. Like, I like it. I know you've coached high school kid stuff in club. Are the weirdest kids still goalies, or is it face-off guys now? Because I think it's face-off kids now.
I think it's a toss-up. I really do. I don't know. I think you got to be a little bit different to play either position. You got to be.
I think you do. I think face-off
mentally very strong, especially the face-off position.
The difference is face-off didn't used to be that way. I think it was just kind of like it's now evolved into that because it's so specialized, just like being a goalie is so specialized. So like if you're going to compare things are too specialized, well, then a goalie's too specialized. Yeah. It's just devil's advocate. I know that's annoying, but
Coach, I'd like to
specialized component. What identifies them as weird?
I think I got
weirdos at every spot. I don't know if it has anything to do with
true.
100%
specialized or not.
It's more high. It's the percentage, right? Okay. Like percentage of position wise, like, that's the weirdest dude on my team. I think it's probably the goalie more than 50% of the time. Is that fair? That's not crazy. No. I don't think that's even I bet goalies would be like, yeah, that's right.
I got some weird middies, so I don't. It's hard for me to even categorize them like that.
Well, you have my favorite midi, who's actually an attackman.
Who's that?
And if I don't talk about it, or if I do talk, I've gotten hate mail for writing too much about it, so I'm going to be on the podcast and just talk about it. I love Jimmy Ayers. I don't care what anyone thinks. I think he's incredible. I've watched him for 3 years. St. John's Prep, just repeat it. I think he's one of the most dynamic players I've ever seen at the high school level. And when he committed to you guys, I was like, that's incredible. That's so amazing that he got Jimmy Ayers. And now I'm like, please keep him. Like, don't let anyone come get him. And I remember talking to people in lacrosse. I was like, dude, this guy's nasty. It's nasty. You're going to see. And they're like, oh, he's small. I'm like, it doesn't matter, dude. The thing that makes him special is his IQ. And I think, he played a lot for you in the fall. I'm not going to like ask you where he's going to play or whatever, but I know that he's a good part of the team. I've talked to Coach Pinchin about him as well. And I can't say enough good things about him. And, in this job, making the transition to cover high school, it was so great to have like a player like that to just be like, okay, that's the best thing I'm going to see. So how do a lot of other guys stack up to that? Because I was still adjusting my level because I'm coming from pro to D1 to D3, D2, and now I'm going to a different level. It's not lower. I'm just using it as an example of pyramid. And he was one of my bars, right? Like if I see a kid from another part of the country and someone's like, hey, is he any good? I'll be like, well, in my head, I'm like, is he better than Jimmy Ayers? And sometimes, a lot of times it's no, but sometimes it's yes. And that was kind of my bar. And I just think it's great that he's a freshman and he's playing for you. I think that's going to be amazing. And I'm excited to keep following his career, even though he's playing down there. It's not really a team we cover that much.
You'll have to start covering us more then.
Yeah. Well, we're New England Lacrosse Journal. He is from New England. So
He's from New England. You got to follow.
Fudge it. I can fudge it sometimes. I will follow him. And it's funny because like I actually got hate mail over the break. Hate email. This is great. The hate email always starts with, hey, love your stuff, but why are you always talking about guys like Jimmy Ayers and Onu Mansky and all these guys that like are 23s, and you didn't talk about this kid, this kid, this kid, and this kid. And it's like, oh, I've made it now. I have someone nitpicking everything that I do. This is great. I feel great. But I just, what has been your experience with him? I'm not going to ask like what he's going to play or whatever, but what's been your experience with him just in the fall?
He's doing great. He's a great young man. He works his butt off. He is highly competitive. He is a pretty aware and smart lacrosse player, makes good decisions. He's more athletic than I think I originally knew when we were recruiting him, but that's also a product of it being a few years afterwards. He's not huge, but he's strong and he's quick, and he's pretty bouncy. He tested pretty well with in our explosive and jumping and stuff like that. I don't know where he's going to play. He's a pretty good player. We'll see. We got a lot of older guys, but he's pushing, and I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. I think he will be a fun career to follow.
A little bit about recruiting. Do you find at Hopkins you have more inquiries about the program from student athletes than anywhere else you've been?
I don't think so. I think because I think it's all relative to where you are. I mean, I think there's probably D3 schools that get as many inquiries as any D1 school, because you got more people that are probably thinking they could play there or interested, and it's a high academic school, so that filters out a lot of kids. Not a lot of kids are looking for that, and a lot of guys that they wouldn't qualify. It's a great lacrosse program, so there's a lot of people excited and interested about that. I don't know, to be honest with you, like how it would rank. I would venture to guess that there's plenty of, like, I got buddies that tell me about their inboxes and they coach at different levels, and I don't envy that either. So everybody's doing the same stuff and sorting through, and when I was at Pfeiffer, I was going to email every kid that emailed us. At Hopkins, it's different, but it doesn't mean we get way more interest. It's just we're a little more selective on that first wave, maybe.
What is the top major at Hopkins? Like, what are most of the kids on the team majoring in?
On our team?
Yes.
Economics, political science. I actually just had it in front of me. It's my practice plan. Where did I put it? I just had it. I left it downstairs in the locker room, I think. International studies. We got one engineer, maybe two. There's a couple guys on the science side. I don't know. It's pretty normal. It's a liberal arts school, so it's pretty common.
Yeah, I was asking because I know like some of these players.
Neuroscience. I got one kid in neuroscience.
Oh, wow.
Wants
That's
to be
awesome.
an eye surgeon. Yeah, he's awesome.
I always give shouldn't say this on the podcast, but I'm going to anyway. Kyle Harrison was a creative writing major. And I was like,
oh, yeah.
You were what? I was like, where's the writing, man? What are you doing? Why aren't we writing about lacrosse? What's happening? And he's just like, I was like, I'm just kidding. You do a lot more. But I always like am looking for, especially pros now and guys that are in college to like write. I'm like, right, man, we need more of it in the sport. I always like, if I have a soapbox to stand on, I'm just like, please, if you enjoy writing, even if it's not journalistic, like if you enjoy writing about lacrosse, please write about lacrosse. Like we like want it and we need it. Like there's just so few voices. And I feel like there's so many, you know, I try to give opportunities to people here, if you know, as much as I can, but I love when players fully invest.
Pete, you want to start writing for Kyle?
Yeah.
Do you want to start writing?
Was that a good speech? Did we get him?
You could write down what I say, but if I start typing it out, you're not gonna be, or you know, it's not gonna make sense to anybody. So I don't want to write. I don't want to write.
No, I did not study English or writing. And
what did you major in? What did you major in?
Business management.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, hey, look what you're doing.
Yeah.
Look what you're doing. Doing great. Coach, last one for me. We're going into 2024. Obviously, everyone's talking about practice.
Mm-hmm.
Practice, not the game. Practice. You have an incredible schedule. Just looking at this, it's a murderer's row, man. You open with Denver after a scrimmage at UMBC, Towson, Georgetown, Loyola, North Carolina, Virginia, Syracuse. Just a straight, hey, let's run casual through the ACC before you even start Big Ten play after the game against Navy. I know it's hard for a lot of schools to construct their out of conference schedule. But what has that process been like for you the last 3 years, and how has it evolved into what I'm looking at now, which has to be one of the highest RPIs in the country?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where you start from. You're trying to build a schedule that can help you compete in the tournament, get into the tournament, prepare yourself for the tournament. You know, give the guys an opportunity to learn and experience things throughout the season that's going to help them, you know, get to a championship game and ultimately bring home a championship. So, you know, it's an opportunity at Hopkins to play the best teams in the country, and you know, some of it's the tradition, some of it's the location, some of it's the facility. Maybe somebody just wants to buy Hopkins because they think they can beat us, and that's fine too. So I want to, you know, play the best schedule that we can possibly put together. You know, within reality, I'm not going to travel 12 times in a row to do it, but I think there's opportunities to do that here. So that's been a lot of the evolution. Is like, how do we get the best teams on the schedule, keep some traditional rivalries, you know, make sure you play in some of the local teams whenever you can. You know, maybe we could play a couple more games. Sometimes that's a little crazy to consider doing that because we got to fit them. I mean, we only have one weekday game, and it's in between, I think, Denver and Georgetown or something like that, or Georgetown Loyola. So it's not easy to get those things in there. So, you know, maybe we could find a couple more, play 2-game weekends. I've done that in the past, and you know, whatever. So we'll see. I don't know if it's going to be if it's a great idea if we don't do well with it. So we got to do well, and then we'll see. Judge it later.
Coach, that's going to do it. It's a great job. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you.
Sure.
Good job, Coach. Really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on, Pete.
Thanks, Jack. Good job to you too, Jack.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. John and Brian, I told John and Brian you were going to be on the podcast today. They send their best.
Good. I love them. Great kids.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And your kids are good? All three, right?
3, yeah. 5, 4, and 1, 1.5. Yeah, they're wild animals, but they're good.
Good for you.
I want to tell one final mini story. So in Lake Placid, you see like all these people that play all the time. They're like, you know, John Grant Jr., you got all these guys walking around. And the great thing about Lake Placid is it's one of those places where like people are there to like do their thing. They're not there to, you know, they're there with their friends. Right. So I'm walking down the street and I see you and I see the look in your eye like, okay, I don't really want to talk to Devitt for 20 minutes. And I just went, I could see that because I can recognize it in people now because they know that I never shut up.
Yeah.
So I see it and I'm like, hey, And the relief on your face, you like couldn't, you had someone on one of your kids on your shoulders, and the relief on his face was like amazing. I was just like, I know how it's played. I'm not gonna bother you. We're in a safe space. We're downtown in Placid. It's like a unwritten rule not to bother anyone.
Yeah.
But that was great. And I appreciate it. And no shade against it at all, but it's one of my favorite things. I tell people about it all the time. They're like, because you talk to people outside of lacrosse about situations like that, or just Lake Placid in and of itself as a tournament. They're like, so you go and play in this thing, and it's all guys that played like pro, and they're all like 50 or 45 and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's awesome.
It's awesome.
No, that doesn't happen in either sport. I'm like, I know, that's why it's awesome.
That's great. Great event.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you can bother me anytime you want, Kyle. I will always enjoy talking to you.
During season, it's definitely going to happen. So just prepare.
That's good. Okay.
All right.
Good luck with the family. Good luck with the season, Coach. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Appreciate it. And thanks again for listening to Doing Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast. For Jack Piatelli, I'm Kyle Devitt. We'll see you next time.